Good afternoon and welcome to the March 19th City of Coos Bay Parks Commission meeting. We'll start with roll call and we'll start online.
Jamie Faraday, Parks Commission.
Jared Schmidt.
Harv Shabothi.
Ariane Lyons.
Kirk Benward.
Patrick Bridgardner.
Greg Hamlet.
Christine Sylvester.
Thank you. I do not see any public comment. Are you going to be public comment? Okay. You're on the agenda.
Yeah.
Do you?
But this is different.
Oh.
Do you want to keep them separate, or do you want? Okay. All right. Just roll on up. Doubles.
Yeah, double
So,
up.
so I'm Cricket Souls, and I live outside of Coos Bay, but I'm a member of the Coos Bay Garden Club. And the Coos Bay Garden Club is the last major garden club. It's absorbed other garden clubs, particularly the North Bend Garden Club. So I brought a couple pictures so you could share. And when they built the new visitor center, for a long time the garden club, Coos Bay Garden Club, had maintained a circle of flowers and watered them and took care of them. And then when they built the new visitor center, that disappeared, and they had a nice visitor center. But instead of putting the Blue Star marker, which is a garden club project, in a green space, it got stuck on a southern-facing wall. So it doesn't add anything at all. So it's on the side where the Prefontaine Memorial is. So you couldn't even put a pot under there with flowers, because they would just cook. So now that landscaping is kind of fixed, looking at the potential to move it into that landscaping. They would like to move it more where it's supposed to be. And it does look, looking at areas, you'd have to work with your crew to look at it, but it seems like on the opposite side, on this, the northern side of it, there's a bench there, and there's enough green space that it could be put in there. It's been in different Blue Star markers are mounted different ways. Sometimes they're mounted on a rock, and there is one rock on there that potentially would be big enough to just mount it right on the rock, no major thing, or find a nice rock that it would. So, as a member of the Coos Bay Garden Club, they're wanting to see if we could fix that, and it might be a really good 250 project, and they love to have rededications of that. So there would be a rededication planned of it. So our neighbors to the North Bend, they have a Blue Star marker as well, and I'm on that committee, so I had to attend to that. So when the old museum closed, their Blue Star marker was right outside the museum on a rock, and it had nowhere to go. So Simpson Park never really got redeveloped, but now that they're redeveloping the visitor center, I didn't know what to do with the marker, so it's been sitting in the planning office for years now. But it looks like have enough green space, and they'll be moving the Merci train, and it probably can be mounted in some of that ground space. Again, looking for a rock, probably. So I'd like the Parks Commission people, maybe someone go by, look at some options for that, and see if they couldn't be a relatively simple improvement.
Do you want it still near the visitor center?
Well, it was a project that was designed to be for traffic. It was designed to be on highways. So that's more appropriate because it's on 101. So I don't know all the ins and outs of their restrictions, because there are quite a few restrictions on it. But it was, so rather than moving it to like Mingus Park or something where you got lots of green space, the idea would be to keep it near a major thoroughfare.
I think as a Parks Commission, we'll jaunter on down there and then have a further discussion about it at the next meeting.
Is the information center under the purview of the Parks Commission?
That's just what I was going to ask. Yeah, I don't think it is.
Well, it can be. We're part
Well,
eminent domain in everything that we can.
Well, we can definitely
You could
reach out and talk to
make a,
Visitors Information Center, maybe for that conversation with those folks as well.
and it probably falls to Greg regardless. It's somewhere in your department. So this, I thought, was a good place to start, because it seems like the Parks Commission is always the one that's meeting and deciding on things. and it does somewhat influence what you do. Okay,
Thank you very much.
thank you. You want me to keep going now?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so now, with a different hat, I don't have one on today, which is unusual.
Action item 3A.
So we're now in 3A, and we'll talk about an update of the Marshfield Pioneer Cemetery. Well, we ran into a glitch with our grant. There's really only one contractor in the state of Oregon that restores headstones, and somehow he got his signals crossed. So he was going to show up in July to do the work that's needed to be done by April, so to fulfill the requirements of the grant. So we worked with Curry Gill. We got a small extension. He will not be able to accomplish everything that was in that original proposal, but will be able to meet enough of the requirements for that. And we did this before with him. So it will become, this is phase 4, so there'll be a phase 4A or 4.5 that will have to do some more work on it. So we're, which means if they're not coming as much, then that lovely in-kind donation of housing sort of hits us at $200 a night. So we need to do some more in-kind stuff, so we'll be trying to do some more things in the cemetery. But I would also like to reinitiate the Ignored Memorial Just Give 4, which was our alumni thing, and maybe have it go in, well, out with the Friday update, and, you know, it'll go on Facebook with the school things and that, so that we can kind of get that going. So unless that will interfere with anything else you're doing, we're only looking for $4, so we're not trying to, you know, shake people down for too much.
Do you do any fundraising around graduation when family members and grandparents and things are coming back in? Or?
It's too hectic, too busy. So, no, we don't. We'll do things, they're already planning May 8th will be a work day. They're going to call it Marshfield Cares, so it won't be just the cemetery, but there will be a crew of students that will work in the cemetery. And there are some that are going to continue to work in it now. They need to have a certain attendance level to walk at graduation. They won't be prohibited from graduating, but they have to walk. And that seems to be a big incentive. So I will get a number of kids that will do that. And some of them will come in and work and actually, you know, clean up things, fill holes, do all that stuff. But others are going to work on the teenagers, because we have 89 teenagers. So not all, a few of them don't have obituaries, so they don't work very well. But they'll be able to pick up an obituary and look at that and prepare either a longer written piece or just a Facebook post that'll talk about the teenager. Maybe this teenager had consumption, what's consumption, you know, that kind of thing, diphtheria, whatever. And just getting this awareness of there's 89 teenagers that are out there working in the world. So there's a couple kids that are already working on that, and then the others will have their choice of people to look at, and I'll work with them, and the Facebook post will go on the Marshfield site, so it has to get edited through me, so we'll know what's going out there. So that's one of the other things we'll do. And they really want to do headstone workshops and cleaning, so we'll have that for primarily just for students in the spring. And on Monday, we're going out to Sunset to do some cleaning there. So the Memorial Day program is set for Thursday, May 21st in the morning. And we were going to, for the 250th, we're picking someone from each conflict to highlight. And if we look at their headstones out at Sunset, they're pretty bad. So we're going to go out and do some cleaning so we can take a picture. And then hopefully they will, you know, kind of take some photos, do some things. So again, kind of get some acknowledgement for what they're doing. So we'll have that, and we will certainly ask for donations and then try and get as many people there for the May 21st thing, because that's when we get people.
Yeah.
But I did get a donation for my husband's ticket the other night that he was out of town, so I did, you know, made a little money on the side there. So every little bit helps, and we do want to kind of put out the Ignored More Just Give 4 And it's surprising when you start talking to people, they say, well, I went to school there. Isn't it all locked up? No. So we still have that issue of saying, no, you can get in there and it's available, that we're just not getting enough people to acknowledge that.
Yeah.
So any other questions or we have not found the headstone that is, I don't know why it would disappear. I don't know who could carry it out of there. It's a big round cylinder, probably weighs a minimum of 150 pounds. We don't know when it's way down at the bottom of the hill where the hole was in the fence, which gave them access probably. We have not found it, so we have filed a police report on that now with Officer Smith, and I think now we'll go forward and start advertising, can you help us find this? And again, no questions asked, we just would like it back. And we always worry that they were really crazy and, threw it in the bay or something. So, but I think we've looked everywhere we could possibly look, hoping that it just hadn't rolled somewhere, but we haven't found it. So, anyway, that's the bad news that we face there at some point in time. Any other questions?
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Cricket.
Moving on down to action item 3B, potential sale of portion of surplus city-owned park property.
Yeah, so on or around January 20th of 2026, the owners of 1510 Barham Terrace contacted the city staff to inquire about the potential purchase of city-owned property adjacent to the residence. The adjacent property has historically been used and informally maintained by the property owners. Staff is currently looking into the feasibility of the sale of this property. This includes reviewing any existing deed restrictions that may prohibit or limit this disposition of this property. This determination has not yet been finalized. In addition, any proposed sale must comply with Coos Bay Municipal Code, Chapter 3.45, sell of surplus city property. If staff determines that the property is eligible for sale, the process will proceed in accordance with Coos Bay Municipal Code requirements, including necessary city council review and approval. So the property owner came in, they live on a corner lot. It's the property itself is tied to the tennis courts. It runs along the entire west side of West Park Road. So they're looking to purchase the south section of that. It ties right into Barham Terrace. They've been taking care of it. They've been kind of using it. All this time, the city staff doesn't maintain it. Matter of fact, I think I've been up there maybe just a handful of times in my time with the city. So it's just kind of there, but it is city-owned. It is park property. It is designated as park property.
You have that title and deed book that we did, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So we're going through everything.
Yeah.
So we're looking through all of that.
Because when we did it and when we did that title search and made that book, we didn't find deed restrictions.
Okay.
But-
We just want to make sure that that this is it. So you guys have an exhibit here of a portion that the person, the residents would like to purchase. It's just shy of a half acre, thereabouts. If it is approved to move forward and we do our due diligence, there will be an assessment done on the property.
Good 400,000 or 500,000. What's our budget shortfall?
That's what I was going to say.
$17 million. But anyways, we'll go through that. So the question that I'm going to ask is if it pleases the commission, approve the recommendation by staff to further investigate the possible sale of the southern portion of tax lot 1600 just north of Barham Terrace and west of West Park Road.
So that actually is part of Mingus Park.
That is part of Mingus Park.
Okay, and we've historically never used it for anything.
That I'm aware of, no.
My understanding, in my vague recollection, since once I handed over the book, I tried to disengage as much. But the majority of the title and parcels there were repossessed properties in the 20s and 30s. And so that's how the city acquired a lot of those sections, regardless of where they are in the different property categories and locations. Then the road was cut through. There used to be a large reservoir up there, and some of the property that is held by the city that's not super accessible was because the reservoir was adjusted and moved and redammed in a different location and then eventually removed. So that area has changed and modified quite a bit, and that's why you see some of these kind of outlying parcels, because that whole section was advertised as an up-and-coming coastal community, and then they sold the lots off to poor, unsuspecting people, and then that whole section, a lot of it was repossessed. So that's how we acquired most of it.
Yeah, it looks like part of their structure is right up against it anyways, and they've done some modification. I mean, they've done a bunch of things to the property, but I mean, that's water under the bridge. So, since we don't use it, I don't see any reason to not pursue it for one reason is it would put the property back on tax rolls, which is an important thing. And then the other thing is that since it's actually, you may have been kidding, but I'm not. Or you may not have been kidding. Which is that since it is Parks property, does the proceeds of the sale go to the Parks Department?
So, historical, you want me to dive in? Let me get
Yeah, dive in. You're getting the scene ready and everything.
So the last time we sold surplus property in Eastside that I found that was still owned by the city, that the city didn't know that it was found because it was still classified and being billed to the city of Eastside, and then I don't know, they didn't realize that nobody was paying the taxes or whatever. But that property, the council promised us was going to be earmarked for that sale and then used into parks. And then it sat in our earmark and then disappeared promptly afterwards. So that is something that we were told at the time we could liquidate assets and that we could earmark it for Parks Commission use or a special project. But it got dumped back into the general fund. So I think that that's something that's worth exploring if we can earmark that or earmark it for a particular project. I think it would be a great PR thing that says, okay, look, we sold this property and it's the matching grant money for replacing all of the playground equipment. So I think if we could make that story piece of finding out, okay, this is how much we can sell it for, this is a need we have in the park, and then we make it an easy sell that way. That way we can more likely guarantee that we keep the funds within our parks system.
Yeah, I like that idea, and earmarking it is a good way. Sometimes when it's just, yes, I'm going to go to the parks, and it kind of meanders somewhere else.
It didn't, and there was.
So I think that would be good. Do you have to go out now and get some kind of property assessment on it if you're able to sell it?
That would be part of the process, yes.
Okay. Would the city pay for that, or would they pay for it?
That would probably be as a condition of the sale, is that they would have to pay for the appraisal.
Okay. Well, anyways, so do you need a motion or anything?
I do.
Okay, well, I would move we accept the recommendation to explore the sale of tax lot 1600.
I second.
Okay. I have a first and second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. I'm saying a good 450. No, I'm just kidding. All right, moving on down to action item 3C, alternative funding discussion.
Yeah, so at the February 19th Parks Commission, the commission requested that this topic come back to the Parks Commission. So we've discussed this topic at several work sessions in the not so distant past. And there's been several ideas floated over the course of, I would say, the last year of conversations. And so that's what this is doing, is kind of rekindling that fire. During the initial discussions, several potential funding options were brought up or identified: the tax revenue, grants, volunteer support, the food and beverage tax, and prepared food and beverage tax, public-private partnerships, allocating more than 1% of the gas tax revenues, creating a foundation which found some legs, and there was some pretty good support for that. Formation of a parks and recreation district, which I think has some interest as well, and implementation of development fees were some of the ideas that were floated over the course of the last year conversations. So this fall discussion is intended for the commission to further evaluate these options or identify preferred strategies for potential advancement, or even some other ideas. So with that, I will turn it over to the commission.
Okay. Thank you so much. Any commissioner discussions?
He's ready to go. We just pushed
Yeah.
the
All
button.
right.
Yeah, I was initially opposed when this came up before, but now after seeing the state parks implement this, I'm not sure the concept of a day use or parking pass is necessarily a bad idea. Quite honestly, since Parks and has done that at the state level, a lot of complaints early on. But on the other hand, the public is pretty well adopted to it. And there's an awful lot of state park property right now that is very attractive that most of us go to. And in my little Prius, you can kind of see the state parks pass sitting there. I paid $25 or whatever it is for the pass. But I'm finding myself, when I pull into the parks, quite a few other cars with that very same pass. So I'm not necessarily opposed to the idea anymore. I was from the standpoint of, well, geez, aren't I funding this already? But in the scheme of things, if we're desperate for revenue to improve the things that we do in those parks, I'm not necessarily opposed anymore to looking at that idea.
Thank you. Other commissioner discussion?
Just processing.
Okay.
Initially, I thought the paid parking would be a good idea, but I struggle. I walk my dog around at night and see all those big empty parking lots and just think, what are we doing here? Why do we have so much parking in this city? But I think the problem would be if we had paid parking in our parks, people would park where it's free, which is in the neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it would, and we see that happens in bigger cities where you have a garage where you have to pay to park it, but instead people just circle around looking for free street parking. And the only way that changes is if you have to pay to park on the street. Mm-hmm. And so, or there are just, so I think it is meter parking in general is maybe not a bad idea. And there are some communities that the meters where parts of town where there are meters, the revenue from those meters goes towards that particular area. So when someone feels bad about having to pay for parking, it's also a reminder that the money that we're putting into that meter is going to that street, that block. So meters downtown, that means that money would be taken out and someone would actually use that money to beautify that street, fix the concrete, whatever. But I kind of come around on my thoughts about making people pay to park at Mingus because they're just going to park in
I'm not adverse to charging some fees for use of any of our parks, just in general. An overall parking fee to go there I have difficulty with, from the standpoint of enforcement. You know, someone's got to be enforcing that they're paying the parking, and whether, I don't think we're going to put in parking meters. That would be prohibitively expensive probably to do. And the way people maneuver around inside those parking lots, you wouldn't want parking meters sticking up anyways. So it would really be an enforcement issue. And Harv, I hear you. I mean, I've got my little sticker for this thing I hang in my mirror for the state parks too, but you know, we haven't heard a lot of bad stuff about it, but I don't think they're really starting to enforce it till the end of March. So once they really start enforcing it, we may hear more. They may get more grief. So, but you know, building on that, the whole concept of fees still at the parks, and I maybe raised this once before, I can't remember. We have certain events there, and a lot of times they're with the swimming pool. You know, I could see if somebody was coming in with their RVs and taking up a large part of the parking space. With that event, we would put some areas, wall some areas off for RV or trailer parking, and just for that event, we would charge those people for parking there, and that could be part of the registration for the swimming event, for example, or camping up a little bit farther. So I could see that because it gets rid of the enforcement part of it, but it would be tough to I think, to enforce the parking limitations down there. And there are a lot of people that drive there just to walk their dog. You know, and or just to see their grandson or granddaughter play on the baseball field. So I don't know. You know, I'm desperate for money, but I don't know if I'm that desperate yet.
I would have to agree. I don't. One thing that I like about our community is that the access to parks and natures is free. It's something that our constituents can go and use. And as we continue to encourage healthy living and biking and walking and being outdoors and gathering again post-COVID, I want to release as many barriers as possible for that. And the reason why you see parking and people driving to Mingus Park to walk is because that's where they feel safe. They don't necessarily feel safe walking in their neighborhood. They don't necessarily feel safe where they're at, so they go to an area where they feel safe to do so, and I think that's the role that our parks play. You see people walk on the boardwalk because it's open and they can see, and you feel safe doing so. So I think I think that's where I have some hesitation about paying for parking. I mean, I think it kind of comes back to is I hate nickel and diming the constituents at the very bottom when I think there's some big dollar items up at the top. You know, the development fees, I know, which are people always hate, and they hate that concept and that communication, but it's a one-time fee that people can build back into the cost of the development. So those are some higher ticket dollar items that I think that personally I see as more opportunity versus collecting $3 to $5 for somebody that maybe can't afford $3 to $5 to go to the park.
Greg, do you have any thoughts about parking fees?
Well, I agree with Kurt. I think for us at a city level, it would be enforcement of that. That would be a difficult thing to do. So in previous conversations, one of the things that really stood out to me and that did gain some traction was the creation of the Parks Foundation. And there was a lot of conversation about that. Matter of fact, I think we had a champion on the Parks Commission that was going to head that up, and that was Commissioner Matthews. I think he was kind of spearheading that, so maybe we can continue that conversation on. We did have a presentation from a group out of Portland. That was also a potential path forward. I don't know if that was a realistic path forward, but it was there. So I think I think the next steps would be maybe to have another couple of work sessions regarding these topics and really just drill down and kind of just iron out where are we going to go. We have a lot of great ideas. We got to figure out the most feasible path forward. What's going to get us the bang for the bucks and the effort, and what that effort looks like by the Parks Commission members. But I do like, Ariana, your thoughts. So we do have restrictions. We can't say, not everybody can afford to pay that parking. Not everybody can afford to get into it. So we have to make sure that we're being equal across the entire playing field. And so we're going to have some folks that are going to say, well, we can't afford to do it, so we're not going to pay for it. We can't afford to pay our fines or whatever the situation may be. So we got an even playing field across the board that's going to benefit the community, benefit the users, benefit the citizens, and benefit the city as we're moving forward. So I think we're off to a pretty good start. I just think we just really need to drill down, like I said, and iron out exactly the path that we want to go.
Yeah.
So.
And I would second that. And going back to that whole concept of a friends group or whatever we want to call it, I've created one of those before, including getting it finally as a 501c3. It's not that hard to do because you've got a general public out there that will support it and become members of that. You've got folks in the community that want to see parks. So I think you can develop that concept, and would be surprised how many people would step up, and even if it's like a $25 membership fee or something like that, it's amazing how many people would contribute to that and then volunteer for the activities that the organization does. So I think that's a feasible way of going, and one that requires a little bit of effort, but again, done it before with not that much time put in to make it happen.
I was just going to say, the 8 ideas that were listed on the agenda, 3 of them really don't require much activity by the city council. And that's the grants and the volunteer support and the foundation. So when you look at those things that are on there, all the other things, food and beverage tax, the public-private partnerships, greater than 1% of the gas tax or recreation district, the development fees, that requires some city council buy-in and some wheels to move, and or there's some difficulties, I think, in doing some of those things. I don't think any of those things are necessarily bad ideas. And I know Carmen, for example, has said he wasn't adverse to a food and beverage tax, and I actually think that that's a viable option too. But as far as difficulty in getting them started, those 3 things, grants, volunteer support, Parks Foundation, are ones that are probably a little bit easier to get started. We did have that presentation by the people from Portland. I ask a lot of questions, and I hope I didn't come across as being negative about them, because I still haven't written that off. I just wanted to know what they were doing. I don't think it would necessarily, I think it would be fine for that to happen as well Parks Foundation, because there's some things that wouldn't work well with them in parks, and there's some things that would. And in reality, if 3 people, if I remember right, 3 people want to get together and fund children's playground stuff in Mingus Park, those 3 people can get together and just go up to that group and really don't involve us at all. And the only thing that were the involvement that I had concern was that they would work out the implementation of whatever they wanted to fundraise for with the city staff and the Parks Commission if it was inside the parks. So I'm still not against that. If I don't think we should give up on if somebody comes to the Parks Commission and says, I'd really like to put in flower beds at the Empire Boat Ramp, we would say, great, go see these people in Portland, and there's 3 of you, and if you want to raise some money for it, cool. But as my friend from the cemetery talked beforehand, that doesn't necessarily work well for some of the things they do. Plus, not only would a Parks Foundation allow for some general fundraising, it would also be another avenue for grant writing and grants. And sometimes people are more open to giving money to a foundation.
Yeah.
Final thing I'll say, and then I'll be quiet for a while, although I know that that's possible, is that for it to work, it really requires 2, 3, 4 people, whatever, that are designated and driving to get it off the ground. You know, that's what's going to make it work. Harv's right. It's not that difficult to get the 501c3, the nonprofit, through the state, through the federal government, or through the state. You pay a little corporation fee, you have some bylaws, you send in a list of who your board of directors are, and you can start down the merry road of being a foundation. But it doesn't happen unless there's that core group that wants it to happen. And so so I think what we need to discuss is, at another meeting, maybe a work session, is, okay, who is really going to commit to doing that? And it doesn't even have to be people on the Parks Commission, right? Who's really going to commit and say, I'm willing to do that, and then discussing exactly what we need to do to get it set up. So yeah, I still think that's a viable option, and probably, and it won't make a lot of money at first. I don't know about membership fees is certainly an option. Writing for grants is certainly an option. Having a foundation booth at the 4th of July celebration at the park and letting people make donations. I mean, there's a lot of things that they could do.
Jamie?
My hand was getting tired. It's been a long time since we've gone over this in a work session, and I agree with Greg that we should pursue the list of items that he presented in a work session. And as far as the parts of the one, these in don't think we'll about for those items, those events that take up extra space at St. Mingus Pool, for instance, the Big Kahuna. Kathy has resisted charging anybody fees, but I think that the pool board would be amenable to recommending that there would be donations, and they can announce that at the Big Kahuna and the other such events for the extra effort that's going to take the park staff to clean up from those who didn't do so themselves. Anyway, let's kick this to a work session, please.
I agree. I think we should take it to the work session. I'm a big proponent of the foundation because I think there's elements of each piece of these that we can do. I like the idea of the membership piece. I like the idea of adding the food and beverage piece to the Parks Foundation. Maybe we approach a business and say, do you want to be a park sponsor? And they can use that in their advertising, and a certain percentage of their proceeds comes to the park. That's a way for a business to voluntarily participate, and they can use that. So I think, and that also comes back to branding. Coco talked about how we don't necessarily have specific branding for Coos Bay parks. You know, you drive by and you know what is a BLM park, you know what the state park is, because you guys are talking about how it's hanging in your window, but we don't have a lot of branding that's specific for Coos Bay parks. So the foundation can do some of that branding piece. It's a foundation piece. Businesses can advertise that they're participating, but I think again it's the foundation that can really push some of these ideas forward. I also think we discussed, and this was years ago, and then it got tabled, and we can discuss it again since it's much more frequent now. We discussed leasing food truck locations in the park for additional revenue. We've discussed that a few times. It got tabled. We discussed that for the Pedway, for the boardwalk, and for Mingus. But that could be something that could be additional revenue for us. We don't have to just be relying on us or our constituents. We have people doing businesses. Of course, it has to make financial sense to do so, but I think that there are some opportunities, especially if we get the opportunity to redevelop the waterfront area, to have kiosks or locations that we don't man, but we can collect some revenue for that can help fund our park system. So, looking forward to further discussion. Okay. Moving on to action item 3D, Adopt a Park Program, AAPPP, Fact-Finding Committee update.
Okay, so at the February 19th Parks Commission meeting, the chair requested that we have an update from the Adopt a Park fact finders, and staff reached out to the fact finding. Actually, staff reached out to the entire Parks Commission requesting information, and I did receive an email from one of the members saying that doesn't have much, but hopefully they can provide an update today. Two of the members of the fact finding committee are here today, so hopefully they can provide somewhat of an update of the happenings of the Adopt a Park program.
Hey, Patrick.
I can't say.
What do you got, Patrick? Okay, I have been doing some digging, and we have missed a few events. For instance, the fire prevention thing I think it's February at the Scout Cabin. And we are looking next at the Mayfly Festival. Before we get to that, the Toppets Park posts have been finished. All the posts that were finished have been installed. This is a note from Lance Knoll. Larry has 11 more that he is going to router with the numbers, and then they'll get painted, and then they'll be installed. So, and as you recall, all the Toppets Park posts were adopted, so those are covered. So they're in the works, getting installed. And the Mayfly Festival is the next Adopt a Park scheduled item for us to help out with. And there's 3 items that we do there, and one is to showcase the Mingus Park watershed with an I'm a Raindrop walk. Coco set up some signs that I think are stored in the community building, and gets people to use either a map or a QR code to walk up to the community building and then back down, following the watershed as if they were a drop of water. And the Coos watershed has some what do they call their passports that they can check off for that sort of thing. The other thing that we have at our table is the compostable dog waste bags, and there is no poop fairy information, etc. And hopefully some information on dog days of summer if we get volunteers to work on that. Maybe we can add that to the next meeting. And all this kind of works with water quality, and I have reached out to Rishi Alada, and we are going to park our tables next to each other, so that makes sense, and maybe we could share some duties there. I just need to get a hold of, I've already gotten a hold of Alexa Carlton at the Coos Watershed, and she knows we're going to be there. So all we need is some volunteers. Unfortunately, I have to be in Northern California that weekend. So I'm looking for help, and I will help you with materials and get it set up. I know Patrick was there last year, and so we can, it's a lot of fun. If you haven't been to the Mayfly Festival, I would encourage anybody to join in. The blast. And sorry, Greg, that I didn't get this to you earlier. I saw your call out like 5:15 on the Friday that was due, or the Wednesday, whatever it was.
Thank you, Jamie. Do you have anything you want to add?
It is a lot of fun, and it's not a major obligation. It's mostly just kind of talking about what is a watershed, and just kind of encouraging everyone to go up to the cabin. So it's very fun.
Great.
Usually it's a nice day, and there's just a lot of buzz as well in the park that day. So it's just fun to be a part of it. We were right next to the tuna tent, which was pretty great. Tuna sandwiches.
Great.
All right. So Jamie, Patrick, maybe sending an email out asking for volunteers. Maybe that might spur some folks to maybe sign up. That might be a good idea for you. Just throwing it out there as an idea.
Yeah. Should I use the commissioner's city email? I know that I am sort of negligent when it comes to checking mine. If you could send me the email that you regularly check, that would be great too. You just put it in the city email, and I will put it in my contacts. And if you have anybody that you would recommend me sending out requests, please do so.
Thank you, Jamie.
I was just going to say I appreciate the Adopt a Parks program, and those of you that are working on it right now too. But and it says nothing about anything other than we lost a lot of energy when we lost Coco. I mean, between her expertise and stuff, she was a real driving force for that. And the Adopt a Parks was able to work on a lot of grants and stuff at that time period too, which I know is more difficult to do. I'm just putting this out there. I'm great with the Adopt a Parks program going on the way that it is. Let's see where we go with the Parks Foundation, and we can get one of those set up. We might actually be able to roll those two in together, and all of a sudden Adopt the Parks and the foundation kind of become one entity, because the Adopt a Parks is trying to look at ways to fund and improve the parks, and the foundation then would basically kind of be doing that same kind of thing. So it might be a way to address the financial part a little bit better than we're able to right now. And if we've got a new board of people on the foundation, including people that are not on the Parks Commission, it might add some energy to the endeavor as well.
Great suggestion. Any other commissioner comments? Moving on to action item 3E, park and grant update.
Yeah, so we'll just kind of do a fire drill on park updates here. Speaking of fire, wildfire mitigation. We're just waiting for the contractor to get back in town. I do know that he's working on a project up in Washington right now. So we're just waiting for him to get done with that, and then once he heads back into town, he'll get started back on that. We do anticipate that the end of March, early April. So probably here in the next couple of weeks is what we were committed to, barring any issues that he has at his other project site. But we fully anticipate that project to be done here in the very near future. Jumping down into the Mingus Park restroom and rewilding project. So the restrooms are done. We're just working on closeout processes for the projects. Again, I think it was a very successful project throughout the entirety of the endeavor. Thanks to the LGDP grant, the Reeser Foundation, they made it possible for us to fund this, and they did a phenomenal job of being reactive to our questions. Staff did a great job, and the contractors were very good as well. So we're very proud of those projects and how they're moving forward. So, yeah, we're doing good on that. Right now we're still waiting up on a sign to be completed. We anticipate that still in March, I believe. I don't think we have anything, no new news on that.
I have not heard anything from them for a while, so I don't know, but I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too.
I think he's on target. I
Yeah.
talked to him
That's
a
on
couple
my
weeks
hands
ago.
now.
Yeah.
Nice. So the TGM grant, the Comprehensive Bike and Ped Plan, is still moving forward as we timelined it out in previous meetings, so nothing's changed on that. The Mingus Park Community Building, so just to let you know, we did apply for a grant with the Certified Local Government. We were awarded that grant. We just found out this week, I think it was Monday we found out, the 17th, St. Patrick's Day, which is a good day. $16,000 we were awarded. That's going to fund for the historical structure assessment and the Specters Past from Conundrum House Experience. So looking forward to those two assessment and that experience happening. The Front Street project is moving right along. Went to council Tuesday, so we got the go-ahead to move forward with that. League of Oregon Cities Award of Excellence. This city has nominated the Mingus Park Renewal project, restroom project, for that award. So we are going to be submitting that to the League of Oregon Cities. So something to be proud of again there. Hopefully we are in contention of it. Again, just can't thank staff and all the people that participated in that project. And hopefully we can get recognized by the League of Oregon Cities for that effort. Operations and maintenance. So this last week and a half, we've cleaned up 17 unhoused camps in John Toppitz Park. We've been working closely with the police department, and we've created a dashboard for the police to, when they go in and post a camp, they have to post it with a 72-hour notice. And what would happen is the police would go in, post it, and then we might not know about it. So we've changed that. So we've created an app on our phone for the police department to go in and post it. They'll mark it with a location, give us a GPS location, so we know exactly where it is. We know they can attach pictures to it. They can tell us exactly when they posted it, so we know, and we'll know in real time when that happens. And then we know 72 hours later, we can go in and clean that camp up. We know exactly where to go and exactly where to find it. You can kind of also have an idea now of what we're getting into.
Yeah.
Which is a good thing. So again, we cleaned up 17 unhoused camps this week. It was a lot of work. Our entire staff broke for 2 days to go do that. So all 9 of our staff were in the park cleaning those camps up. Along with OBAB's help on the 14th. They cleaned up 2 or 3 camps, I think, on that day. So we have a lot of work to do in John Toppitz Park with unhoused camps inside the park. Mowing and maintenance inside the parks is still an ongoing thing. And then also the Coos Forest Patrol, which we talked about in February. They started in John Toppitz and they finished in John Toppitz already. So they did a good job for us. They did exactly what we thought they were going to do. And so, yeah, a successful endeavor, I think, in that fact. And other than that, you guys are up to date.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That's wonderful that you got the $16,000 for the community building. That's great news. And the restrooms are wonderful as well. Just a question, since Reeser gave us the grant, do we ever give them any feedback? Like, do we send them a nice photo and a little letter that says, hey, your money really helped us out, and look at this beautiful restroom that we have now?
Yeah, I believe that's in the reporting to them, is that we let them know that we were successful.
Cool.
Great. Any commissioner questions or comments on the report? We'll move on down to commissioner staff closing comments. Jamie, do you have any closing comments?
I don't.
Just want to, Greg, just tell your team thanks again for all the work on Mingus. It really is a treat to drive past every morning and see the progress that's been done. So thank you guys on your team very much.
Thank you.
And I don't have anything.
I get email notices and alerts from ODOT And I only mentioned this in case you didn't see it. I'm sure staff's aware of it, that because of ODOT funding problems, they've suspended funding for safe routes to schools construction grants. Not the planning grants, but the construction grants. So, and you know, I'm sure I was probably brain dead when we talked about it. I really don't know where we are in the process with our old safe routes to schools, one around the high school and stuff too. But I was sorry to see that, but I understand their rationale. They just haven't got money to go around, and I don't want them to fire ODOT employees. So, anyways, it's told it's just a hiatus for 1 year, and so I hope that that's the case. Other than that, you know, always Mingus Park looks good. I drive by it every day. I love them restrooms. But I think we're down to just one aerator. So, anyways, I appreciate all that you do.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Patrick? Okay. Craig?
Yeah, thanks, Kurt, for bringing that up. We are down to one aerator. It is out for maintenance, so we are working on that. Again, staff doing what staff does, so that's a good thing. Appreciate that. Again, thank you to this commission. You guys really keep us on our toes, A, and B, you guys are a good source for ideas and a good source for bringing projects to mind. Without you and your volunteering to be here, sometimes twice a month for a couple hours is amazing. I really do appreciate it. I know that we rely on you folks pretty heavily to bring us your thoughts and your ideas. So thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate everybody being here today and participating in our community. I thank staff for the amazing stretch that they do with the dollars that they have. I think that's absolutely amazing what you do. You can definitely see it in the pride in the work that everyone's doing out there. So thank you so much. Also, thank you for fixing the clock on Central. I've had several people thankful that the clock is. It is 10 minutes fast, though. So I did have 3 people be like, I was 10 minutes early to my meeting. But it's nice to see it moving again. So thank you so much. Thank you, and have a wonderful day.